The cold wind cut through the air like a knife, rattling the windows of the shooting range as a group of elite marksmen gathered around. The tension was thick, heavy with anticipation and a hint of disdain. In the center stood a woman no one expected to see, a newcomer, untrained by their standards, and certainly not part of their prestigious circle. She was Sarah Collins, quiet and determined, clutching her pistol with steady hands that betrayed none of the nerves inside. The elite shooters had laughed when she arrived, whispers of mockery floating like smoke through the crowd. "She's just wasting everyone's time," one of them sneered. "Wait until she cracks under pressure," another said, smirking. Sarah ignored the sneers. She had come for one reason, to prove herself. The stakes were high, and the challenge set before her was brutal. 10 bullseyes in a row, something none in the group had ever achieved. The first target appeared, a small circular. Bullseye mounted 50 yards away. Sarah took a deep breath. Time slowed as she raised her pistol, focused on the tiny center point, and squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack echoed through the range, and the crowd gasped as the bullet hit dead center. 1 down, 9 to go. The elite marksmen exchanged glances, disbelief creeping into their eyes. Could this woman really be the real deal, or was it luck? The second shot rang out, and again the bullet found the heart of the target. The third, fourth, fifth, each shot precise, each hit perfect. The silence in the room was broken only by the sound of bullets striking metal. Sarah's heart pounded, but her hands remained steady. With every shot, her confidence grew. The laughter and sneers faded into nothingness. Then, just as she was about to take her 10th and final shot, the lights flickered. A sudden gust of wind swept through the range, rattling the targets and making the atmosphere electric with suspense. The crowd held its breath. Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger. Bang! The bullet soared and struck the bullseye dead center. The room erupted in stunned silence, then exploded into cheers. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. Sarah had shocked them all. The story of Sarah Collins didn't start here at the elite shooting range, but in a place far removed from privilege and prestige. A place where survival was not a game, but a daily battle. Growing up in a small, dusty town nestled between endless plains and harsh mountains, Sarah learned early what it meant to fight for everything. Her father was a hunter, her mother a nurse, and life was never easy. There were days when the family barely had enough to eat, and nights when the cold threatened to seep through the thin walls of their old cabin. But Sarah had a fire inside her. A stubborn flame that refused to be extinguished by hardship or ridicule. She practiced shooting with her father from a young age, learning to trust her instincts and steady her nerves. The gun was never just a tool. It was a lifeline. Years later, when Sarah moved to the city seeking new opportunities, she found herself in a world where her skills were dismissed, where the elite saw her as nothing more than an outsider, a joke. The invitation to the range came, unexpectedly, from a friend who believed in her quiet strength. "Come prove them wrong," he said. And so she came. Back at the range, whispers spread about her unbelievable streak. The elite shooters began to question everything they thought they knew. "How did she do it?" one asked, staring at the perfect target boards. "Must be a trick," another muttered, but Sarah said nothing. She simply collected her gear, her face calm, but her mind racing. What no one saw was the storm inside her, memories of doubt, fear, and the crushing weight of expectations. This wasn't just about shooting, it was about proving to herself that she belonged. That night, Sarah sat alone in her small apartment, replaying the events of the day. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind a raw exhaustion. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You're better than anyone here. Don't stop now." Sarah smiled for the first time in days. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. She had already changed the game. But the mystery didn't end there. The next day, News spread about a secret competition, invite only, held deep in the mountains, a place where the best of the best gathered for challenges that tested more than just aim. Sarah received an invitation, but it came with a warning. Win, and you'll earn respect. Lose, and you may never be seen again. The stakes had just become real. Sarah stared at the envelope in her hands, its thick paper rough against her fingertips. The words printed on the front still echoed in her mind. You have been selected to compete. Prepare yourself. No return. Address. No signature. Just those words and the image of a mountain range shrouded in mist. Her heart hammered. The secret competition was real. It was no longer a whisper or a threat. It was a challenge laid bare, one that could change everything or end everything. The following morning, Sarah packed her belongings with a quiet determination. The weight of her pistol in the holster felt familiar, comforting even, as she slipped it on. She thought about the elite shooters who had mocked her, their disbelief still lingering like a bitter aftertaste. But out here, in the remote mountains, none of that mattered. It was about survival, skill, and endurance. She boarded the small plane that would take her to the base camp, a makeshift settlement hidden deep within the rugged wilderness. The pilot, a grizzled man with sharp eyes, didn't ask questions, only nodded once when she handed him the envelope. The flight was turbulent. Clouds whipping past the windows, the landscape below shrinking into a patchwork of green and grey. Sarah felt a mix of excitement and unease, a strange cocktail that made her hands tremble just slightly. When the plane landed, a chilling wind greeted her, and the air smelled of pine and cold earth. The base camp was unlike anything she had seen. Tents clustered together, shooting ranges set up under tarps, and a crowd of competitors already gathering. They were all skilled, she could tell at a glance. Faces hardened by years of competition, eyes sharp with calculation. No warmth, no friendliness, just cold professionalism. Sarah found a quiet corner to gather her thoughts, but she was soon approached by a man in dark clothing, tall, with a face scarred by past battles and eyes that seemed to see through her. "Sarah Collins," he said, his voice low and steady. "I'm Mason. You've made quite a name for yourself. But here, the game is different." Sarah nodded. "I'm ready." Mason smiled thinly. "Good, because this competition isn't just about hitting targets. It's about survival, navigating the wild, finding your way when the odds are against you, and sometimes trusting no one." The first challenge was brutal. Each competitor was dropped at a different point in the forest, armed only with their pistols and minimal supplies. They had to find their way to the central camp, following clues scattered throughout the terrain. The paths were treacherous, the weather unpredictable. Sarah's heart pounded as she moved through the dense trees, every sound amplified, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird. She kept her pistol close, eyes scanning for any sign of danger or a clue. Hours passed. Fatigue crept in, but Sarah pushed on. She thought of her family, of the struggles that had shaped her. Every step was a test of endurance, every breath a battle against doubt. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a symbol carved into a tree, a strange mark that looked like an arrow pointing north. She took out a small notebook, jotting down the clue, before moving on. Meanwhile, tensions simmered at the central camp. Mason watched the competitors like a hawk, noting who faltered and who thrived. Whispers spread of strange disappearances, some participants simply vanishing without a trace. Sarah heard the rumors and felt a chill. This was no ordinary competition. Something darker was at play. On the second day, the challenge shifted. Competitors gathered to face a series of shooting tests, but this time the targets were moving, unpredictable, designed to test reflexes and nerves. Sarah stepped up, her body tense but focused. The targets appeared, mechanical birds darting across the sky, metal plates swinging wildly. Each shot required precision and quick thinking. Her first few shots were perfect, the bullets hitting their marks with uncanny accuracy. The crowd, watching, was stunned. Sarah's reputation was growing, but so was the danger. As night fell, Sarah lay in her tent, the sounds of the forest surrounding her. She felt eyes watching, unseen forces lurking just beyond the firelight. Sleep was elusive, her mind racing with questions. Who organized this competition? What was their real purpose? The next morning brought a shocking revelation. Mason approached Sarah with a solemn expression. "You need to see this," he said, handing her a small device showing footage from hidden cameras in the forest. The screen flickered, revealing shadows moving swiftly between the trees. Competitors whispering, looking terrified. "And this?" Sarah asked, pointing to a figure lurking in the background, someone wearing a mask, watching silently. Mason nodded. "They're here to test more than skill. They want to break us, to see what we're made of." Sarah's resolve hardened. She wouldn't be broken. The final challenge approached, a grueling obstacle course combining navigation, marksmanship, and endurance. The prize was more than a trophy. It was respect, survival, and a chance to rewrite her story. As Sarah stood at the starting line, she looked around. The faces were different now, some friendly, some fierce, but all aware of the stakes. Her fingers tightened around her pistol, eyes blazing with determination. The whistle blew. The race was brutal. Sarah ran through mud, climbed steep cliffs, and shot targets that popped up without warning. Each moment was a battle against exhaustion and fear. Halfway through, she slipped on wet rocks, twisting her ankle. Pain shot through her leg, but she gritted her teeth and pushed forward. Her mind flashed to her father's lessons. Never give up. Your mind is your strongest weapon. Near the final stretch, Sarah saw a figure ahead, one of the elite shooters who had mocked her before. He sneered, confident he would win. Sarah's heart pounded. This wasn't just about the competition anymore. It was about proving that resilience and courage mattered more than privilege. With a burst of strength, she sprinted forward, steadying her aim. Her final shots were flawless. 10 bullseyes in a row. The crowd erupted in cheers. But as Sarah crossed the finish line, a shadow moved behind the trees. Someone watching, waiting. The competition wasn't over. Sarah's victory should have been the end, the moment where she proved herself beyond doubt. Instead, it marked the beginning of something far more dangerous. The cheers around her still echoed, but Sarah's mind was elsewhere. She had felt it, the eyes in the shadows, the chilling presence that refused to let her forget this competition was unlike any other. That night, the camp was quiet, except for the crackling of fires. Sarah sat outside her tent, staring at the flickering flames, her thoughts racing. Mason approached, his usual calm replaced by something urgent. "They're coming," he said simply. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Who?" "The organizers," Mason replied. "They don't just run the competition. They watch, they test, and if someone becomes too much of a threat, they remove them." Sarah's blood ran cold. The whispered rumors from before suddenly felt all too real. "We have to be careful," Mason continued. "Tonight, no one leaves their tents. No one goes anywhere alone." But Sarah wasn't one to hide. The next morning, while others hesitated, she was already exploring the camp's perimeter. She needed answers. Deep in the forest, she found signs of something strange, unusual footprints, broken branches, and faint markings etched on trees. It was clear they weren't just competitors fighting each other. Something else was hunting them. She returned to camp with a heavy heart, sharing her findings with Mason. "We need to find out who's behind this," she said. "Why are they doing this?" Mason nodded. "I have my suspicions, but we'll need proof." The days that followed were tense. Sarah formed uneasy alliances with some of the other competitors, people she had once seen as rivals, but who now shared a common goal: survival. One of them was Eleanor, a sharp-eyed woman from South Africa, skilled in tracking and survival. Another was Jack, a quiet man from Canada, whose calm demeanor hid fierce determination. Together, they planned to uncover the truth. Their first step was to find the hidden base rumored to be the command center of the competition, a place where the organizers controlled everything. Under cover of darkness, the group set out. The forest was alive with sounds, every rustle and crack making their hearts race. Sarah's pistol was ready, but she hoped they wouldn't need to use it. Hours passed as they navigated through the dense trees, following clues Sarah had discovered earlier. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a large tent, heavily guarded. Lights flickered inside, and muffled voices could be heard. This was it. Elena signaled for silence. They moved closer, crouching behind thick bushes. Sarah's pulse pounded. She peered through a gap and saw screens displaying live footage of the competitors. Maps, target data, and communications. Everything was monitored. Then, a voice came through a speaker. "Subject 7 has potential. Prepare for Phase 2. Sarah's breath caught. "Subject 7, that's me." The group quickly retreated, but their presence hadn't gone unnoticed. Suddenly, spotlights swept the clearing. Alarms blared. "Run!" Mason shouted. Chaos erupted as guards poured out, weapons drawn. Sarah and her allies sprinted through the forest, branches slapping their faces, their lungs burning. Behind them, shouts and gunfire echoed. Hours later, exhausted and bruised, they found refuge in a cave. "We can't go back now," Jack said grimly. "They know we're onto them." Sarah looked at her companions, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. "This competition was never just about skill or survival," she said. "It's a trap, a twisted game." The next challenge came without warning. The organizers forced them into a final test, a deadly course through the most dangerous part of the mountains. No more clues, no more allies, just them, the wild, and the hunters watching their every move. Sarah steeled herself. She wasn't just fighting for victory anymore. She was fighting for her life. The journey was brutal. The weather turned harsh. Storms battering the landscape. Food and water were scarce. Sarah's ankle, injured earlier, throbbed with every step. But she refused to slow down. Memories of her family and past hardships fueled her determination. She was no longer the mocked outsider. She was a survivor. Near the peak of the mountain, Sarah stumbled across an old cabin seemingly abandoned. Inside, she found journals, detailed accounts of previous competitions, some ending in disappearance, others in tragedy. One entry stood, "Out," written by a woman who had disappeared years ago, warning future participants. "They don't just want to see if we can shoot. They want to see if we can break." Sarah realized the competition was a twisted experiment, testing human limits under extreme pressure. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden noise outside. She grabbed her pistol as the door creaked open. To her surprise, a figure stepped in, a man she recognized from the competition. It was Lucas, one of the elite shooters. His face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "They're coming," he whispered, "and this time they won't stop." Sarah's mind raced. Could they trust him? Was he a friend or foe? Lucas explained he had been forced to cooperate with the organizers, but secretly wanted to escape. Together, they formed a plan to expose the truth, not just to survive, but to bring down the people behind the competition. As they prepared to leave the cabin, the sky darkened. A storm was coming, fierce and unforgiving. But Sarah felt ready. She had come too far to back down now. The storm hit with a violent fury, rain lashing against the cabin's thin walls, thunder rolling through the mountains like distant gunfire. Sarah and Lucas huddled, Inside, the journals sprawled out on a wooden table between them, their faces lit by the flickering light of a single lantern. "This has to end," Lucas said, voice low but urgent. "We can't let them get away with this twisted game." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of every lost life recorded in those pages, every competitor broken by the cruelty masked as a challenge. The organizers had hidden behind secrecy, but she was determined to bring them into the light. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would reach the central camp where the organizers controlled the operation and expose their secrets to the world. Sarah's injured ankle throbbed with every movement, but she pushed through the pain. The forest was no less hostile in the storm, branches heavy with rain and mud, slick beneath their boots. They moved quickly, shadows slipping through the trees, avoiding patrols and hidden cameras. Every step brought them closer to the truth and to danger. At the edge of the camp, they crouched behind a fallen log, watching as armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Lights flashed from the control tent, the nerve center of the operation. Sarah took a deep breath, her hand steady on her pistol. "We have to get inside." Lucas produced a small device, a jammer they had found in the cabin, and set it to disrupt the security systems. For a moment, everything went silent. They slipped inside the tent, hearts pounding as they found rows of monitors, files, and communication equipment. On the largest screen, footage showed competitors, exhausted, frightened, some injured, all under constant surveillance. Documents detailed the organizers' experiments, psychological tests, physical endurance, and manipulations designed to push participants to the brink. Sarah's stomach twisted. This wasn't a competition. It was a cruel experiment, a hunt disguised as sport. Suddenly, the tent door burst open. Guards flooded in, weapons raised. Sarah fired her pistol, the sharp crack echoing as bullets flew. Lucas dove behind a console, returning fire. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Sarah's world narrowed to the pulse of adrenaline and the need to survive. With a burst of courage, they overpowered the guards and grabbed the main communication device. Sarah sent a live feed of the camp's horrors to every major news outlet. Her voice calm but resolute as she narrated the truth. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the camp, chaos erupted. The organizers' control was slipping. Sarah and Lucas fought their way through, helping injured competitors escape. As dawn broke, helicopters arrived, authorities finally responding to the broadcast. In the aftermath, the organizers were arrested, the secret competition exposed to the world. Sarah stood before a crowd of reporters, her voice steady. "This story is about more than just marksmanship or survival," she said. "It's about the strength we find in ourselves when faced with impossible odds. It's about never letting fear or mockery define us." Her eyes swept the crowd, filled with hope and determination. Months later, Sarah returned to the shooting. Range, this time not as an outsider, but as a respected champion. The memory of those 10 bullseyes remained, but so did the lessons learned in the mountains: resilience, trust, and the power of courage. She knew the journey wasn't over, but now she was ready for whatever came next. Lesson: true strength isn't just about hitting the target perfectly. It's about facing the storms life throws at you, the doubts, the dangers, the mockery, and still standing tall. It's about finding the courage to fight for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible. And most of all, it's about believing in yourself when no one else does. The end.